Gomez and Company welcome former SU quarterback Eric Dungey thanks to Liverpool Pool and Spa on the flagship station of SU football, TK99 and TK105.
Eric, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Highlight of the weekend for you was what now?
My sister and my brother-in-law and my nephew actually came into town, so we spent the weekend with them. It was a lot of fun. Got to see the little nephew and hang out and enjoy some time. Didn't get the best weather up here. It's raining a lot in Oregon, but we had a really good time.
Well, that's cool. Well, we'll talk first. Final thoughts from last week. I know we didn't have a chance to chat on Friday, but Thursday night, Syracuse at Pittsburgh for... I don't even know what to call it, nightmare. We had, at the time, on the following day, someone through text had said it was like watching AMC's Fear Fest Halloween. Like if it was a horror movie, what would you name it? And there were some people who were naming that unfortunate game. But, I mean, the wheels fell off early, the first series of downs, really, and just never was able to turn around. And I don't even remember, Eric, had you been involved in games where it just, for whatever reason, that just happens and you can't seem to right the ship and it just keeps going down that road?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like, the train gets rolling, you can't put a stop to it. The 4 interceptions in the first half, I told Brian, I was like, I don't remember the last time a quarterback has done that at Syracuse, and I was joking because it was me. Against Miami, granted, I was able to take one of them back, and they didn't go back for touchdowns, but 3 pick sixes. I don't think I've ever seen that, let alone in a game, but in one half of football, and it's very, very tough to bounce back from that. If you actually look at the stats, I mean, Syracuse pretty much dominated the game offensively. Besides the fact of scoring the points, they had 42 minutes of possession, higher yardage, and it was just the interceptions and turnover margins are going to kill you. +1 or +2 is going to be is kind of where you want to be at. But when you're negative in a turnover margin, and especially by 5, it is incredibly hard to bounce back from that. For Syracuse, like you were saying, it's just when one thing went wrong, a couple things just kept gathering up. I mean, the fact that the guy was literally laying on the ground, the ball just falls into his hands. It's just like, all right, this is not going to be our night. This is going to be really tough. I think defensively, Syracuse actually did very, very solid. But it was just, it was not pretty. I don't think Pitt was the better team. They just had the better night.
And going back to the game, and obviously easy in hindsight to look back and second guess or to question, but the fact that Kyle was in the game as long as he was in the game, was that a surprise to you watching the game or no?
That was a little surprise. I mean, I understand, wanting to, right the ship, try to come back, and I love Coach Brown's mindset of, I think he said after the game, until about 4 minutes or 3 minutes left in the game, he started to realize, all right, we might have to put this one to rest. I don't think there's a shot to come back. But at some point you got to just look up and be like, all right, this is not our night, and you got to get a backup in there. Kyle's done so phenomenal. We know exactly what we're going to get out of Kyle. This was, not his best game, probably the worst game he's had in his career, but this happens. I mean, as a quarterback, and still threw for 300 plus, just a few bad breaks there. But I love the fact that he kept slinging it. I mean, 64 throws is always going to be, something could go wrong, and unfortunately things went wrong 5 of those times. It would have been nice to see the backup, especially late in the game, just so Kyle didn't get hurt or something else happened there, and just to get him reps as well, because the future is, it's unfortunately Kyle's not going to be there forever, so you got to make sure that you get some guy game action, whether that may be, a guy here or if it's going to be a transfer next year. You never know with how college football works now, but yeah, the game was definitely out of hand there, especially with like 5 or 6 minutes left in the game. So would have loved to see somebody else in there just to make sure Kyle wasn't getting any extra hits or wasn't going to get hurt. Luckily, he came out of there unscathed. But yeah, it was not a pretty night.
And then because the game was on a Thursday, it's almost like a mini bye week with, again, heading into the Virginia Tech game coming up this Saturday for the noon kickoff. But again, is that a little too long of a time now in between games to dwell on? And I know it's easy to say, we got to look forward. And I know when we talk to Coach Fran Brown later in the week, he's a forward-looking guy. But is it tough to do that? And does that extra time off not help?
You know what? I think it doesn't help in the sense that Virginia Tech is going to be going back on this Pitt film, and they definitely watched the game already. They're breaking it down. They're probably breaking it on Thursday night, Friday, even though they played this weekend. But they're always looking forward, and they're always having somebody, the analyst, that their job is responsible. All right, what happened? What was Pitt doing defensively that was making it a nightmare for Kyle? So you know that Virginia Tech is going to come out, and they're going to do the same scheme. So for Syracuse, they have to figure something out. They got to get on the same page. They have to make sure that they can start establishing somewhat of a run game. 32 yards from the point, but I mean, I think we were, 6 or 7 total as a team. If you negate the yards that Kyle had for the sack yardage, you're not going to win football games if you're not able to at least establish somewhat of a run game. So for them, they just got to go to the shop. And, Kyle's arms have been very, very great this whole year. But when things aren't going great, you can't just rely on one thing. So offensively, they really got to make sure that they go to the workshop and they're putting in some new wrinkles. And I know Kyle's going to come out. He's a competitor, and games like this happen. Luckily for him, he starts over next week. It's going to be 0-0, and he can really just write the story from there, and he can bounce back from this adversity.
Did you have a chance to watch some NFL yesterday? So a lot of exciting finishes.
Yeah, I saw the Commanders game. That was a pretty great finish there. I loved having the defensive back at the game. The play was going on for the Hail Mary. He's basically hyping up the crowd, kind of being a sore winner there. And then the ball gets tipped up and it gets caught. You kind of love to see that instant karma. Some great football there, though. But, it's been an interesting year, NFL and just college football as well. I was looking at the end of the schedule here, and even for Syracuse, I mean, Cal has proven to be a pretty solid team here. They've had some really, really close losses. Virginia Tech's obviously going to be very tough with Kyron Jones and a very mobile quarterback, so we're going to have to put up points. Boston College, you have another really mobile quarterback with Thomas Castellanos, and as well as UConn. I mean, even Connecticut this year, who would have thought, is having a pretty solid year, and then you got Miami at the end of the year to kind of round it out. So there's no for sure win here. It's going to be really tough to go in and make sure that we're on the winning side of the scoreboard. But it's going to be tough, especially with 2 of those games being on the road, and then your last one's against the powerhouse Miami, who, if they keep winning, will probably be a top 2, top 3 team in the nation. So for Syracuse, just got to make sure they're going in, fixing the things they need to fix. And Kyle's just got to get that confidence back. And I know he will. He'll come out gunslinging next week. And then that offensive line's just got to give him a little bit more time and open up some gaps for LeQuint, just to establish somewhat of a run game to take some of that pressure off.
Eric, thanks. As always, great to chat. And Friday? Same time Friday? I sometimes I get my script screwed up, but I think it's Friday, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Eric, thanks as always. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you Friday.
Sounds good. Have a good